Has Christianity gone soft? We've spoken about how sort of the atheist side coming in is assessing religion, specifically Christianity, with perhaps less of a fine-tooth comb. In order for Christians to say, with open arms, we permit you, person who does not have an active belief in God, in the resurrection of Jesus, in many of the things that are important to faith, and you just said that would have been heretical. Is this both sides nerfing the bar that they need to get over, one in order to believe and the other in order to accept?
Maybe. There's also the difference between like the Christian religion as practiced in the history of the Christian church, with a particular emphasis on like modern Christian Europe and how it behaved. There's that kind of Christianity, and there's the kind of Christianity which is like emulating the figure of Jesus, which is, I think, the important thing. So, for example, has Christianity gone soft? Well, consider the Christianity of the Crusades versus the Christianity, the sort of lukewarm, half people don't even believe, like less than like 1% of the population are going to Church of England churches, you know. Like, yeah, that's definitely gone soft, but arguably the kind of either military or strong-armed Christianity that emerges in the history of the Christian church is itself an inappropriate hardening of the Christian message. Right? The figure of Jesus,
like Christian relativity. Like what is base for Christianity?
And religion is always famously just used to buttress political aims and
functionally
campaigns.
How can we have this ideology, this dogma, to be able to drive us forward, perhaps if we wanted to invade some other countries?
Or like how can we motivate people to believe that we're on the right side here? I mean, famously Adolf Hitler, that people debate all of the time whether he was a Christian. Who knows? I mean, he was a Roman Catholic, but he never renounced it, but like, you know, he wasn't acting very Christian, let's say, but he did have the belt buckle of every Nazi soldier have Gott mit uns, God with us, written on the belt buckles. Atheists weren't allowed to join the SS. Didn't want them. Didn't think they could be trusted, I suppose. Hitler says explicitly in Mein Kampf that in standing guard against the Jew, I'm doing the handiwork of the Lord. Right, so he's using this religious terminology. And a lot of people like to point out to me, like, I'll hear Christians say, yeah, but he was actually an atheist. I mean, he was just pretending to be a Christian, surely. And I'm like, well, why would pretending to be a Christian make it easier for him to be a fascist? You know what I mean? It's sort of a bit of a confusing thing, but yeah, because people use religion in this way, and so there's the question of like, well, you know, was Adolf Hitler a Christian? Right. Well, maybe he would. Maybe if you ask him, let's say, you know, we discovered some text or some bit of the table talk that we didn't otherwise know about, and he says, yes, I still very much believe in God and believe I'm doing Christ's work. There's a sense in which you could say, see, he was a Christian. That's what the atheist might say, but the Christian would say, I don't care what he claimed to be. Being a Christian is doing the work of the Lord. Being a Christian is enacting the will of the Father, right? So interestingly, maybe
without fruit.
Maybe you don't even need to believe in God per se to be a Christian. You just sort of need to do the will of the Father. It's hard to know what counts as being a Christian, but I think sort of the two approaches that clash in this Ian Dawkins, you know, rumble is the difference between the approach that says the thing that matters is that you live the right kind of life and have the right kind of ethics, and the other side, which says the thing that matters is that you get the right theology, that you have the right truth claims. To me, that seems a lot less human. It seems a lot less in accord with the way that Jesus spoke and behaved and acted. I mean, he's not going around like settling theological disputes, really. You know, he's responding to theological disputes and people are trying to test him theologically, but he always responds to them with a sort of vague classiness that sort of transcends the dispute. It almost makes nonsense of the disputes. So, yeah, I don't know. Has Christianity gone soft? Like, yes, politically, like clearly it just doesn't have the political power anymore. A lot of nominal Christians don't really believe in what they're saying. They sort of go to church because they feel like they have to, but don't actually have the same kind of passion that you'd like to see in a sort of firmly spiritually convicted Christian population. Sort of doesn't exist, at least in Britain. I don't know about America. It's probably much more enthusiastic here, but in Britain,
the interesting thing about America, I spent Easter Sunday at Austin Ridge Bible Church, This is the first American service that I've been to. The only other time that I've been to a service recently was at Ripon Cathedral on Christmas Eve. Ripon Cathedral, Christmas Eve, 245-year-old woman with a C-shaped spine playing the organ. Everybody singing hymns, brief talk in between. Very sort of cobwebby, classic sort of British Christmas thing. I go to Easter Sunday, Austin Ridge Bible Church. I pulled up behind a 150 grand Corvette supercar that had God Now as the number plate on the back. That was the first thing. I went in, the lady that was the warm-up act for the main person that was giving the sermon for the day started using religious language. And I was like, oh God, we, straight into it. And she said, guys, please, we must remember to have patience and forgiveness, and we must give grace. When turning right out of the car park onto Bee Cave Road. And I thought, oh, wow, okay, this is an interesting use of sort of semi-Christian language here to direct traffic. And then the opening act was a 6-piece rock band, complete with 20-person backing choir, fireworks, a full LED wall that would have made my nightclub career look paltry, with the lyrics up behind so that everybody could sing along, even me who didn't know the words. Lead singer, very charismatic, playing the guitar, dude on the drums, black guy playing saxophone, set of glasses on. They come up, they do an encore, they leave. Another lady comes on, introduces stuff, and then a guy comes out and with a mic, and there's sort of background music that swells when it's important and kind of stays quiet when it's not. And then he leaves, and then the band comes back on, and they do maybe 1 or 2 more songs, and then everyone goes outside, and there's Starbucks coffee and stuff.
And then they ask for your money.
They didn't ask for my money, actually. They were rich enough. Not once was the word religion used. Not once. Nobody in that room thought of themselves as religious.
Yeah.
They have a direct relationship with Jesus and with God.
Oh, sure.
It's all about, it's just Jesus, like super, super Jesus stuff. And that, I was like, what is that? What's Christianity when you kind of rip much of the ideology side out of it? I don't even know. What is that missing? What is it that they've done? What have they taken out of what I would be more familiar with from what I would have learned in school?
Well, insofar as they're doing that, they're probably getting something right, which is that Christianity is not so much a set of truth claims, a religion as we'd use the term today, as it is a relationship with the person. Christianity is a relationship with Jesus. That's what it is. So, I mean, the word religion is famously very difficult to define. And also kind of doesn't exist as a concept until relatively recently in like religious study and comparative religion, because like you find religious communities from 1,000 years ago, and religion isn't this like thing that they do. They don't have like work, family, religion, like get my MOT. It doesn't like box off like that. It just is,
permeates.
It's the air that you breathe and the water that you swim in. It sort of doesn't really make any sense. I mean, it's like a fish trying to define water, which I'm sure the fish can do, but only once you take it out of the water and sort of show it what it was swimming in before. But it wouldn't consider itself to be swimming in water, I think Immanuel Kant had this image of a bird or a dove like flying through the sky and sort of thinking, like feeling the wind resistance and thinking, gosh, if only I could get rid of this wind, I could fly so much faster. If only I could get rid of the air. And that's kind of what like people are doing with religion. If only I could get rid of this resistance. But you're sort of throwing out the baby with the holy water. So they're probably getting that right. I'm not sure about the whole megachurch situation. Having said that, I've never been to one, and
pretty cool.
I know people
Seats were comfy.
A friend of mine recently told me that he went to one of these like megachurch experiences in England actually, and was just sort of overcome with emotion, tears streaming down his face uncontrollably, like a sort of unbelievable experience. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. But then I also have a friend who we recently sort of accidentally stumbled upon like a sort of traditional, I think it was a Catholic service. There's 4 guys singing some choral songs, and we were holding candles. It was a concert. They said free concert, and we went in and they gave us candles after going through the metal detectors, they gave us these candles, and we were sat there, and there were these four guys singing this sort of Latin Christian music, and my friend used to be a sort of like a real American style Christian, and said, like, wow, I've never experienced anything like that. That was amazing. Like, that was really amazing. And I thought, gosh, it's just because it's not what you're used to. The person who's used to that will be amazed by the megachurch. But the person who's used to the megachurch, oh my goodness, this megachurch stuff is ridiculous. But it's sort of, I think it's got
eating one meal for the entirety of your life and then going, oh my God.
Because what it shows you is that, like, you can separate out, this idea of being a Christian or worshipping God from all of the trimmings that you think necessarily go with it. Standing in this like drafty old building with a bunch of elderly people going, we believe in one God, the Father, and like doing the Nicene Creed, and going up and getting in queue for communion, and the sort of the trembling priest like putting a bit of bread on your mouth, and you think, gosh, this is a bit lame, and it is. So then you go to like a megachurch and you think, oh goodness, right? Like you can isolate the Christian bit, put it in a new context, and suddenly it's amazing again. Maybe Christianity isn't so bad after all. So it's got a lot of utility for that reason. But yeah, I mean, my understanding of what the Mass should be, of what church should be, is a meal. Jesus, Last Supper, breaks the bread, drinks the wine, says, do this in memory of me. It's the Passover meal. Well, it's the Passover meal in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. In John's Gospel, Jesus dies before the Passover meal. Maybe the other way around, because John's trying to say that Jesus is the Passover lamb who's being slaughtered, and so there's a kind of biblical contradiction there, as whether Jesus dies before the Passover or after the Passover. That's kind of a side point. So I think that, like, what the Mass is supposed to be, Jesus says, the whole reason the Mass exists, the Eucharist, is the sort of the zenith of the Mass. It's where you eat the bread and drink the wine, because that's what Jesus did before he died, and he said, do this in memory of me. But it was a meal. It was a feast. And I have a feeling that in early Christian communities, the Mass was a meal, but then they stopped doing that because it became too much about the meal. People used to just show up to like eat and drink and be merry. But then why not? Why not? Because it should be a
operationally nightmare.
Yeah, probably. But so I don't think there should be like hard and fast rules exactly on how to do it. But I am a little bit suspicious of the whole. I don't know. People have made this criticism of megachurches, and I don't like the money. I don't like the sort of fame, the celebrity. The fact that you use the term warm-up act in a church environment just seems wholly inappropriate. But like the criticism that's often made that it's too like it tries to get you sort of in a state of vulnerability by using like musical tricks and stuff. I've seen some people tweet this. It's a social media thing that crops up every now and again. People say, oh, I used to think that I really like loved God and I was like really into like worship, but turns out I actually just liked music. Oh, it turns out I actually was just like really into drums. And it's kind of a joke because they're like, oh, it was just the music. But like, yeah, like hold on, just take a step back and ask the same question again. Well, why does that music move you in that way? Sure, Coldplay can do it too, but then arguably Coldplay are sort of approximating the same kind of spiritual openness that people are trying to achieve at church. The only difference is that when they do it at church, they then use that state to sell you God rather than sell you merchandise,